this will be the first video in my beginner scripting series. In this video, we will not be going over any sort of scripting, but just how to basically work around ROBLOX Studio, which is very important. And although this isn't about scripting, you will need this for making games on Roblox. So now that we have that settled, if we want to make a game, now that you have opened ROBLOX Studio, we can select from any one of these templates. Although these templates do look nice, we just want to focus on something basic where we can learn upon. So we chose baseplate. The reason we don't use something like classic baseplate or flat terrain is because baseplate has a lot of the features already built for us that classic baseplate and flat terrain don't have. So if we click on it and let it wait or think to load our place, we will have our place loaded. And you might see that you don't have properties here, you don't have this historic image here, but that's completely fine. This is just how I like my ROBLOX Studio to be like. Of course, you can change it later on by just grabbing it and then putting it in the location you want it, but of course this is just preference. So now that we have that, we will see this camera. And you might be asking, okay, how do I navigate through it? This doesn't seem very much like Blender, but don't worry. To move around, we use WASD. If we want to go up or down, we can go E and Q. If you want to rotate your camera, we can right click. If you want to zoom in and out, we can scroll in and out. So now that we know how to navigate with the camera, we can go over the next thing, which is this top bar. The top bar is basically a place in which ROBLOX Studio gives you any sort of tools you might use frequently. Like if we want to make a part, which is actually quite frequent, we can click on that and it'll create a part for us. Now that we have this part, you can see that this Explorer has this part selected in the workspace. Now, what is the Explorer? The Explorer is a window that basically lists all the things that we have in our game. So we have all these services too. These services are basically containers in which you hold any sort of specific object. Although these services aren't limited to just one sort of object, like I can put this part in players, but it's not convention, or it's not the norm to put a part in players. It'll be better to put it in something like workspace, or if you don't want it to be shown, you can put it in something like a storage area. So now that we have that settled, the reason we have this part in workspace is because workspace is basically where all the things we want to be rendered, or all the things we want to be viewed by players in our game. So now that we have this Explorer that shows where our part is selected, we can see these properties. Now these properties are basically the things that define our part. Like the color is defined by the part because it has medium stone gray, or it has that color. We have the material it uses, the transparency, if it's anchored, maskless. Of course, if you have any sort of questions, like if these names aren't intuitive or don't make sense to you, you can just hover over it and it gives you a short description on what that thing is, or any sort of like constraints it has. So that's pretty cool. And then we have the output, which is basically then for our scripts messages to be at. It'll also give us any sort of studio messages, like if our games get saved, or if we don't have permission to use our audio, it will be put into the output for us. It'll also have plugins, which plugins are basically user-made tools that will help us. So of course, I have a plugin created that is called Historic. I can't tell you why I have this, as I can't question it. So now that we have know what plugins are and what this top bar is, you might be asking, okay, how are these like the only windows that I need to have? And Actually, no, these are just the main ones that you will be needing to use to make your games. Of course, if you want to add new windows or delete these, you can. Or if you accidentally delete one, you can go to view right here in the top, and then you will see all these sort of windows that you can have. And if you don't know what they do, you can just hover over them and it'll give you a short description. Like if I want to know what performance does, and it says it gives us a view of diagnostics information of your game. Of course, if you have any sort of more questions about what it does, you can also Google it, as Google is your friend when developing. Of course, we accidentally delete the properties. We can click it back on, and it should be highlighted, and it should give us where that this window has appeared. Uh, and yeah, that's pretty cool. In some tools to show off is if per se I want to move this part, which I already can by holding it and moving it through. If I want to move it through like a specific direction, I can do that by either going through the properties and setting it to something else. I can do that, or I can click this move tool that Roblox gives us, and I can move it side to side in this specific X direction. Or if I want to move it up and down, which is the Y axis, I can do that. And if I want to move it side to side, I can also do that. Of course, you might be asking, okay, how is it in the air and not falling down? I thought Roblox had physics in it. Why isn't it doing this? And this is because we haven't tested our game yet. This is basically a sort of like frame in which our game starts at. So if we want to actually start any sort of physics or want to play our game, we can do that by clicking this play option or play button. This button also isn't just here, but it's also in test. So if you want to emulate a certain device, you can do that. Or if you want to have multiple players in your game, you can do that as well. But of course, if you want to play around, you can just click play and then it'll load everything for you and then it'll play. And you will see this break on the floor because it actually does behave with physics. So once we have played and we want to exit it, we can click stop right here. Or if you can't for some reason, or if you're like zoomed in and you can't get out, you can click Shift F5, I think, and that should exit it for you. And as I said before, there are some sort of properties that you can alter that will change the behavior of this part. So if we want it to stay in the air, we can actually check or click on anchored, and this will actually just basically anchor the part in place so it doesn't move no matter what. And of course, we can also change if it's collidable, so if it will be colliding with other parts or other sort of players that will be basically bumping over it. So if we test this right here, we can see that it's gonna stay in place and we can phase right through it, like if it was like some door. And here we have a part floating, and if I jump on it, it'll like be if it wasn't even there. Of course, there are like tons of other sort of properties, and these properties do change for each sort of object or class you have. And these classes are basically sort of like a blueprint for, or like a template for any sort of like object. So if we have something like a label, it won't have something like anchored, because a label doesn't have any sort of physics property. But what it would have would be something like a text to display on. So if we add something like a label, we see it doesn't have any sort of anchored property. Like if we go right here and go to anchored, it won't, I mean it has anchor point, but it doesn't have the anchored property like this part has, right? And this is because the class is different, and for each class it's usual that it has different sort of properties. So that's also something to note at. And now that I've basically gotten over everything, I just ask you to play around with it. And as a sort of homework for you, I want you to create a house with all the things you've learned. And for a quick review, if you haven't understood anything or just want to like refresh your mind, we have the viewport. We can move WASD, go up and down with EQ, scroll in and out. This is where all the things that will be rendered in your game. Yeah, the top bar, it has any sort of tools you have that will help you out. If you don't have any of these windows on, you can put them on by clicking view and adding the window. You can also hover over it for a quick description. The Explorer is basically a sort of list or hierarchy of any sort of parts or objects you may have, and you want to know the location of. All these services have have a different functionality for each one and serve a different purpose of their own. Like Workspace is a spot where all the parts you have are rendered in the viewport and for other players to see. The properties are all the things that define that part, and you can see it when you select a part in the Explorer or just in the viewport. Then we have the output. The output is basically all messages where script comes from, or all the messages that a script can send to, or any messages from Studio, like if it's saving or if it's audio mistake or something. And yeah, that's it. Also, if you still have trouble with understanding it, I suggest looking up a sort of tutorial on what you have trouble with. So if you still have trouble with like navigating across Studio, you can also look that up with tutorials, as I'm pretty sure there will be dozens of sort of articles that you can read at. Of course, if you don't want to do that and just want to refresh your memory again, but don't want to go over to review because it doesn't have any sort of information you have trouble with, I will have a quiz posted in the description of this video very shortly that will hopefully be able to give you any sort of new information you might not know the answer to, or give you any sort of answers you want, like if you are struggling on a certain topic in this video. And yeah, that's basically it. So I forgot to include this in, but if you want to create a specific sort of part, you can do that by going to the Explorer and then going over the object you want to be as a container. So let's say I just want this object to be in Workspace. I can go to Workspace, and then I can either right click on it and click Insert Object, or I can hover over it and then click on the plus icon. And right here it gives us a whole sort of like list of all the things I can add on it. And most of the things that won't work on it will probably be these like grayed out names. This will be the things that you probably won't want in your workspace. And if you want to add something like part again, or if you want to add a wedge or a sphere, uh, or I forgot, but sphere, he can't add a sphere directly because it's not a class, but you can add something like a wedge. So if I look through wedge in the search bar and I click on it, it will add a wedge for us, which is pretty cool. This also applies the same if I want to add a part into this wedge. Also, something to note at is that Roblox isn't Unity, and if you put a part in a part, it won't like weld them together. There's a specific sort of process that we have to go through, and it's to do that we have to either go to model here and then use any of the sort of constraints it has, or do it manually. But I won't go over that right now, as I just want to give you the very basics. And yeah, that's it. This very last thing that I'll have to show you is that if you want to save your game, because obviously if you have a sort of script that you've worked on for like hours and you close out of Studio and it doesn't appear again, it'll freak you out. So to save your sort of base play into the Roblox servers, you can go to File right here, and then click publish to Roblox. This will give you Roblox will give you a window on all the sort of basic information that you'll need to have. So in my instance, this is just going to be my tutorial place, as this will be the place I want where I'll store all my scripts and stuff. So all this stuff doesn't really matter. Of course, theme create is for if you want to uh, develop with other people in the same place, you can do that. But I'll just keep it on for right now. And then you click create. It'll then sort of like create a new place for you. Since I have team create right here, it'll sort of like close this window and then open up a new one. And yeah, that's basically it. Of course, if you want to save your game again, you can do Control S, I think is a shortcut for it, or you can just go to File and then Publish to Roblox, and it'll publish it to Roblox servers for you, so it'll be saved on their servers, and you won't have to worry about any sort of saving. Also, another thing to note at is that I think it'll like publish automatically for you, but it won't. Yeah, I think it'll just like automatically save for you, so you don't have to worry about constantly publishing if you create a new change. So yeah, it's really neat. And yeah, that's all. Peace.